Morning, everybody. Coach Kurt here with the LFS-Kali Fight Team, doing another episode of two FMA-Nerds talking about stuff. So, in today's episode, I brought on Kevin Goat from Kevin Goat Self-Defense. He's a pretty prominent Instagram martial arts guy, but he's also my friend, and he's got a really interesting background and interesting perspective about self-defense and personal security in martial arts. He's a repeat guest as well. In this episode, we get into the reasons why for personal protection and self-defense. We actually discuss the differences between the two. And yeah, as we often talk about on these episodes, it's getting on more beyond the capacity, the purpose, and identity and value attached to violence as men. So, without further ado, let's get into the episode. It's a good one. Thanks. What's up, Kevin?
What's going on? Yeah, if you guys want to learn about me, just go to my website, calgarygongfood.com. Check out my profile in there. Make life easy.
Yes. So, brother, we had a slight agenda today, but let's just get into this stuff. We're talking about jumping into different modalities of training, particular to personal protection and self-defense, because there's a slight distinction between the two.
I think there's a huge distinction between the two personally, right? Because and I mean, I've been on quite a few podcasts and talking about the same thing, but I love, having a similar topic and talking to somebody new about it, because everybody has a different perspective, right? Yep. And, I always say, it's the difference between martial and art, right? I trained martial arts since I was 5 years old. And I think, where it really stemmed for me was when I'm learning techniques and people say, oh, you train martial arts, self-defense. Well, we both know that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, so what drills or what mindset for me are either one, instructors teaching their students or students learning from their instructors, that's actually going to help them out in a combative situation.
Right. So with that, what is your definition of self-defense versus personal protection?
Well, self-defense brings in the laws and regulations and where you live. As you and I were just chatting about, the laws and regulations in Canada versus the States are very different. Yep. The laws and regulations amongst our country, each province is very, very similar. It doesn't change like in the States. Or in the States, it's like red or blue state, completely different laws, completely different rules of engagement. And I think that's where we have to kind of differentiate is okay, so if you have someone that's going to hurt you, what are you allowed to do and what would you do? Right. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Because I have rules of engagement that follow the law.
Yep.
I have rules of engagement that do not follow the law, but follow what I'm willing to do in order to keep my family safe. Right. So if I'm with my family and somebody approaches me, they know to get back to the car as quick as they can, lock themselves in the vehicle. If they're still close enough, film what's going on, call 911, give location, things like that. So that right there is good self-defense on their end, right? So that I don't have to worry about them. because that's going to make a big difference for how I choose to engage or I don't engage.
Yeah.
As far as it goes for, what does that mean for self-defense? Like, it changes things, right? If I'm with my family, I'm willing to go to jail to protect my family.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But does that mean I have to go to jail? Right. Because, so let's set up a scenario.
Okay.
Guy approaches me. I'm with my family. Hey, you're that self-defense guy, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's see what you got. Right. Immediately, I go into de-escalating the situation. Well, I'm doing that. My girlfriend and all the kids, they're weary now. They're awake. They're not lost in La La Land. She's like, get ready to go, kind of thing. At least I hope she is, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, it's time to go, right? So she sees that stuff's going bad. She should be recognizing the verbal cues and realizing that this situation isn't de-escalating. This isn't a joke anymore. This guy really wants to see what Kevin's made of.
Mm-hmm.
So best case scenario, she's already retreating. I'm by myself now. He throws a punch at me first. I defend myself. I hit him down to the ground. I hold him down on the ground using my jiu-jitsu skills and controlling him. Police come. They arrest him. Fantastic, right? Possible assault. I did block first and hit. And let's say even better case scenario, she's filming the whole thing. So we have evidence that I just didn't smash this dude in the face, right? Because I'm the guy with cauliflower ear. I'm the guy with tattoos. I'm the guy who's on top. The cops show up right away and I'm pinning this guy down. I should be okay, but they might be like, get on your fucking knees.
I mean, typical.
And, hands up and doing what they should be doing, right? Where, are there innocent bystanders at the time? Blah, 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 blah. So it's basically wait for me to be in cuffs, wait for the other guy to be in cuffs. Now my girlfriend can come out and be like, hey, this is exactly what happened. He defended himself. And if there's other witnesses, fantastic. CCTV cameras get involved. Like, how many people talk about this, right? How many people think about these things, right?
I mean, the fact is, when we talk about the soft skills, people think chi balls, people think internal medicine, which, I mean, to a point it is, but the soft skills are actually the mindset and dealing with not just the mindset of violence, but the mindset of life after violence and dealing with the immediate legal and long-term legal situation, because it has to be defensible in court, for one. Because I mean, the bills that you're going to pay for an assault, depending upon the levels of it, is the potential hospital bills, the legal fees. You're losing out on potential income. You're dealing with the social fallout that comes along with it. So there is so much cost that comes along with engaging in violence. Not to mention, if you fail and you're trying to protect your keynote, your primary purpose, your persons. You could fail to a point of that is catastrophic, because I mean, not everybody's Superman, because as much as martial arts we try to believe that they are, the fact is Navy SEALs come home in a body bag because the universe and the enemy have a big say in it. So who's to say that with all of our skill and experience that we just might be caught blind with, like, say, getting a brick to the head or 6 dudes at one.
Well, and that's where, so let's take that scenario and let's make it a little bit worse, right? Mm-hmm. So he throws a first punch, I block it. As I go to throw the next punch, I miss it. We end up in a scuffle. We end up in some ground fighting situation. He lands a couple blows. While he's throwing those punches, I end up getting a sweep on him. I get to a better position, and now I know that there's some serious threat. I start dropping some bombs on his face. Mm-hmm. When do I stop punching? Right. And a lot of people don't talk about that. Like, very simply stated, I say, once they're no longer a threat. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't have anger management training, and if you're not cool as a cucumber, as they say, like, you might keep on punching because you might still be, they say, like, I see black or I see red, like, you don't know what it's like. It's like, there's a point where you don't, like, when you're hitting somebody's face and you feel it, like, you don't feel the pain in your hand if you've trained, right?
Yep.
But all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, when are they not fighting back anymore? And I think that's why martial arts is so general or so important and so special, because it teaches you to find that soft side, as you put, of like, listen, I'm calm enough right now. I've been here before. The person isn't fighting back. I better stop punching. I don't actually want to do harm to this person. But whenever you've been in a fight, even with martial arts training, you get mad.
Yeah.
Like they hit you, like you're not like, oh, you know, that was a good one, right? It was like, oh, you mother, like I'm gonna smash your face in now, right? But how far do you go?
Right. And I'm of the opinion that people who have fought have a higher level of calm because, like you said, they've been there, done that. And what I find with martial artists that have not legitimately fought in combat sports or fought in the streets or come from a combat military or LEO, just people who actually, by badge, by oath, by profession of arms, who've been there, done that, people who have not come from that background have a chip on their shoulder. One could say it's the unblooded, untested man or woman that are the most dangerous. So this is the importance again of sparring and fighting and conditioning of through pressure testing. So, but still the universe and the enemy will have a say in it because we are consistently dealing with a reaction to contact rather than preemption. Preemption's a hard thing to defend in court. It's depending upon the laws of where you're at with a reasonable belief or causation of harm to self and persons up to the point of lethality. It kind of depends on where you live because like firearms in America, that's a hot button topic depending upon which state you're in and which jurisdiction.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where, like, without even bringing weapons into play, right, is when can I strike first? And like, that's a real tough sell, right? So same scenario. Buddy goes, I know he's getting aggressive. He pulls an aggressive stance. He starts clenching his fist. I don't know if my family has returned to the vehicle yet or if they're safe. I happen to be scanning his body and I see that he has a utility tool or a pocket knife on him. And now I'm like, okay, well, this can go to deadly force. So can I shut down this deadly force right away? But when one, you need a goddamn good lawyer. Two, you need to be able to tell the police officer immediate incidents 24 hours and 72 hours later when you do your other interviews that, listen, like I felt threatened. I was worried about my family. I seen all these pre-fight indicators. I didn't think he was going to go for it. But at the same point, I knew he was getting aggressive. So I stepped in quick with a palm strike and to try and create distance so I can run back. So I can run back to the car. You like that, Renee? Isn't that nice? It's nice. Yeah. Nice fresh shave for you guys today. Right. But it's like, that's the hard part, right? So there's two ways of thinking about all of that. Is one, can you just run away? I watched a video the other day of this guy. They found this pedo and he was, you know, trying to pick up this 14-year-old girl. They like set up this whole scenario, this 60-year-old man, right? And they're all like confronting him. And this guy comes up from the side. He's like, yo, give him a break. Like, what's going on? They're like, he's a 60-year-old man trying to, you know, take this 14-year-old home or whatever. And without thinking, like within a split second, he turns and just rocks the dude and then full sprint runs away. And everyone's like, who is that guy? Like, what's going on? Did anybody get him on film? He's gone. And it's like, that could be a good call, right? I'm not suggesting it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not saying go start smashing people and run away, right? Especially with CCTV cameras and everything these days, right? Like it's very unlikely you're not going to get caught. But at the same point, like when I was growing up, that's how it was. Right? You get in a fight, you smash, you walk away, you go, right? Like nobody was pressing charges, nobody was doing anything. It wasn't as protective as it is now. But so going back to it it's like, what mindset are people training with when they train? right? Because are they jumping on top of somebody and just smashing their face in all day long and then being like, okay, I won the round, it's good. Well, that habit alone going to get you in trouble. So say, for example, like with my students, I'm like, okay, you're in mount, give them a couple shots, hit them, and then head on a swivel. And it's head on a swivel to see if cops are coming, head on a swivel to see if multiple attackers are coming, head on a swivel to find your exit point, because at any point that person can counter you, or they can pull a knife, or they can pull a gun, or they can do something. You got yourself into this position. You have to be able to get yourself out of there. So I'm not a big fan of, say, mount and ground and pound, where knee on belly is way better because it's giving me exit points. So my jiu-jitsu and my ground fighting curriculum reflects self-defense. So it changes everything, right? It's not built for competition. It can work in competition, but because there's space, you're giving yourself space to exit. That means you're also giving them space to be able to counter you as well.
Yep, you're contextualizing it because it's human movement and human violence, but you're contextualizing it based upon combat sports and potential combat scenario. Exactly. What is interesting is going back is the protocol that you have in place about screening forward, allow for your primary to exits and get to a place of safety, and recording and calling at the same time, because that protocol alone has to be rehearsed. Because I mean, we did fire drills growing up, so why not react to contact drills? Not like battle drill 1 alpha in the infantry speech, but still react to contact as to like, we're engaging in violence, how do I get the kids out of here? Because that part, you have to train that, because there's always that you see the videos of the wife, the girlfriend trying to hold back the boyfriend and the husband from engaging in violence, and then she gets caught in the middle of it. And so with the scenario
out because of it. I've seen that more than anything. I've barely seen the second person, or the, say, girlfriend in your example, right? I've actually seen them hold the arms back and they're like pinned, and then buddy gets cracked, right? And you're like, you're not helping at all, right?
You're causing.
Does it need to be trained physically? I'm gonna say no. Mentally, yes. Right. And it's those little things that make a difference, right? And I think that's where, like, true self-defense is more mental training than physical.
Agreed.
Right? Like, I'd say, like, hopefully 95%, because you should never have to use your skills. You should be able to verbally de-escalate a situation and walk away from it. Right. And that's why I love the comment section so much. Like, if you guys want to engage with me, go on Instagram. That's where I'll engage with you the most. Right. Facebook, I don't bother. YouTube, it doesn't help my algorithm. Instagram, it really does. Right. So people jump on Instagram all the time and they're like, well, you know, like, I would punch that dude in the face. I'm like, because they called you a bad name, because they made fun of you. Right. You're possibly going to go to jail. You're possibly going to get charged for assault. You're possibly going to, all of these things are going to happen. Like, you might even kill the guy. And all of this stuff is going to happen because of what? Like, what is it that you're actually doing? Right. And for me, it's when you start seeing that and you see that behavior, it's like, those people need to go get the help. Right. They need to go get some self-love. Right. Because if somebody's calling you a name and you let that affect you, or somebody's calling your girlfriend a name, like, it's very easy to say, now I'm 40. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
Because in my 20s, like, what'd you call me? Right. I'm not the same anymore, but it's like, that's the goal of everybody's, I don't know how. For me, I want to live a peaceful life. So that's my goal. Like, I don't want to fight anybody. Like, I fight 3 days a week when I teach. Right. And, like, we go at it. It's hard. It's not easy. Right. Like, I'm looking pretty good today. You know? Right. But it's like, if you don't have a bloody nose at the end of class, you don't have a black eye, like, are you really pressure testing yourself?
Yeah. Because men, I'm saying, like, mankind need to engage in daily violence, not just like violence for the sake of criminal violence, but needs to engage in difficult things to keep them, one, in check, but also keep sharpening the blade. And by doing so, you have a better understanding of restraint, and because you understand the skill. I mean, I talk about power is in control because I know what I can do and I've done it often. So that restraint aspect is really truly the thing that I practice. Because for one, approaching 40, I'm a little beat up and been there, done that, and I have so much more on the line if I fail, and there's a higher opportunity for me to fail because approaching 40 and the limited constraints because I'm trying to protect my primaries, my wife and my children.
Well, it's like in my 20s and in my 30s, right? I was training 8 hours a day, right? And teaching 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? All the time. And as you and I know, if you do that for so long, your body pays for it. My body is fucked.
Right? Mine too.
And it's like, so I can't train that way anymore. So it's like, I was actually worried. I'd probably say it started like 6 years ago. I was like, okay, I can't train as much because I can't be in a 10 out of 10 pain every day. Today, I'm at a 7 and I'm pretty happy with that. Right? Taking my CBD to help me. I don't believe in pharma helping unless it's like really, really bad, but it's very rare that I go to pharma, right? Because there's better ways. And it was interesting because I was like, okay, well, how am I still going to train mentally to make sure I'm safe? Well, first of all, I need to go within and I need to fix myself. Right? If I have ego issues coming up, I need to be able to squash that. And I need to be able to find a point where I can still do what I need to do. I can still turn the switch on, as they talked about in the military, of like, you go overseas, you turn your switch on, you kill people, you come back, you turn your switch off, and life is normal again, right? And because I never went overseas, I never got to experience that. So I'm only dealing with like real world situations and combat that I've experienced here. And it's when I got to a point where I was like, you know what? Mental training is almost more important. I started meeting people in my life that were telling me stories. So like one of them, really cool story, actually. He's a police officer. He got involved in an altercation. He got shot, and he was a right-hand dominant shooter. And he lost basically full function of his arm, right? It's slowly coming back, but he would never be a right-hand shooter again. He's like, I might be able to punch with it, palm strike. I should be able to go back to work, the doctors are saying. But he's like, I can't shoot with this hand. He's like, my finger's like screwed. So basically a trainer that he was working with basically said, start mental training every day with your left hand while you're laying in the hospital bed, because you want to go back to work right away. I know who you are. So he sat there every day and he retrained mentally with his left hand, and he retrained again and again and again and again and again. And finally he got back to the range, and he actually scored higher with his left hand than he did with his right hand. Shows how important that mental training was, right? Because you're still creating that neural pathway. You still need to put rounds on range. You still need to practice. You still need to get into your martial arts place 1-2 days a week, 3 days, hopefully, right? As a bare minimum. If you want to maintain those skills and progress through those skills. Right? But that mental training, like, it gave me a massive, it gave my body a big enough break that I started actually even getting better in my physical, because I wasn't overtraining, because I didn't have repetitive strain injuries, because I wasn't walking around pissed off because I was in so much pain. And it was really cool to see all that change once I really understood what martial arts is about. It's mental, physical, and spiritual.
Right.
It's all three of those.
Right.
But everybody looks at it and they're like, it's just a physical. Especially in North America, we love physical. Then the mental is like, yeah, okay, I'm learning something from this, I guess. I guess I'm learning about patience. I guess I'm learning about perseverance. I guess I'm learning about the ability to survive. I guess, etc., discipline, etc., etc. All the things that parents throw their kids into martial arts for, right? But the spiritual side of things, when you really get into martial arts, and you get to learn so much more.
I mean, it's interesting. So mindset training. So mindset is the hot button buzzword. But mindset is mindfulness. It's manifestation. It is the mental gymnastics that we go through to process through scenario. I often call it the what if game, but it's the scenario training and putting forth the effort to make that happen intellectually. Because it keeps us in a creative mindset.
Yeah.
And it helps us problem solve through intellectual debates and in points of interest. Because like in the military, we go through a bunch of what if scenarios verbally, and then we practice it, but we also manifest it. I mean, professional level, like top tier professional athletes, talk about the mindset of manifestation. If I believe I'm going to win, I'm more likely to win. I'm conditioning myself for the win. Now, the tricky part about that is conditioning yourself for the win, but not having the reality check on the back end of I could lose. Yes. But what is my recovery process after that loss?
Yeah.
And that comes with the understanding of failure happens often. It's how we learn, but how do we get better at each stage? And again, that's all mental. It's all about the intellectual training.
Yeah. And I think that, it's right when you said that, I reminded myself of when I was working with some Olympic athletes. Right. And I'm like, okay, mental training, we're going to meditate, we're going to manifest, we're going to go down, we're going to do the whole course. When the course is done, you imagine yourself being gold medal, right? And two guys were in the same event. They're like, yo, we're both in gold medal. Like, like, what do you mean? Like, who's going to win? I was like, okay, but now what you have to do is you have to have no attachment to your outcome. Yourself, manifesting yourself, getting that gold medal, but at the same point, don't attach yourself to that. And that's not easily understood in North America, right? And that's why I usually go into the Buddhist teachings, right? Because the second noble truth of Buddhism is letting go of attachment. So it's okay to have those goals. It's okay to have those ambitions. It's great. It drives you. It allows you to wake up in the morning, gives you purpose, gives you all these amazing things, spiritual. But when it comes down to it, when that loss happens, or if it happens, then you're like, okay, how do I find gratitude for that loss? And when that's the key word that helps every athlete or anybody really, of it didn't happen. I didn't get the promotion at work, but I'm grateful for the lessons I learned on my journey up until this point, that maybe next time the promotion comes up, I'm going to get my promotion then. And I think when we can tie in both Western and Eastern schools of thought, now we're really going to understand. And that's why I like Filipino martial arts, Japanese martial arts, Chinese martial arts, right? North American martial arts isn't in that same category, right? North American martial arts is like, let's fight, let's do combat, right? And then you have all these other styles, Brazilian, the list goes on and on, right? It's like, it feels like they really understand so much more. And why is that? Is it because it's a second world country, a third world country, and we're living here in this first world country? Well, at least for the time being. Right. And is it because we've never suffered? Right. And again, because I'm not a Buddhist. I don't believe in any religion, but I've studied many. Right. Buddhism really opened up my mind, because it was like suffering. How can I be okay with suffering? And these people that have suffered, like, they don't know when they're going to get their next meal. They don't know when they're going to get fresh water. They shit outside, right? Those people understand suffering, and they can find gratitude for living in the slum. Amazing. Where you take a North American, you go put them in that slum, they're going to have a real tough time.
Suffering, as cliche as it is, suffering is good for the soul.
It's the best.
And what's interesting, talk about the Western dynamic. So a problem with some of the warrior conditioning in the Western philosophy is it's tied to violence as a currency. Therefore, my value, my identity, my purpose is tied to my capability of violence, and have a higher currency of that violence. I am more valued for society. Which is such a dangerous archetype, because on the back end, this is very much into the 4 stages of man. Talking about the warrior, the leveler, the warrior, the lover, the magician, and the king.
Okay,
yeah. When you stay in the warrior, that is task and purpose specific, but you're disconnected from everything.
Yeah.
And the warrior comes out when necessary. You can live a warrior life, but you have to have these other things as a man to be a complete man, to maintain the balance of why we fight is based on love. Because beyond the love of doing the thing, but it's for the people whom we love. And just in the same, we give power to what we will. So giving into that ego, like we can give into ego at great cost. We can give into our violence at great cost. But where we should give more will toward is on that mindset, mental training of 1, restraint, 2, conditional identity isn't based upon my capacity of violence. Because if I fail at that, then I've lost my purpose, I've lost my identity, and I'm an utter failure as a human being, let alone as a man. And that is a dangerous mindset to be, because it's conditional love is what it is.
100%.
And that is a terrifying place. And this is where looking at from the privilege of modern first world societies that are fairly young, Canada and US are fairly young compared to all the other nations that we spoke of before. And we've had a lot of peace and plenty because we've had 2 oceans separating us from the rest of history and the rest of the conflict that has been the global history of humanity. So we're speaking from privilege, as children do speak from privilege.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's like, if we go back to the warrior mindset there, right? It's like, so 2 things. 1, this fallacy that in order to be a good FMA instructor, you have had to be in knife fights.
Yeah, that's so.
Right? You should have scars and all this. But like the thing is, okay, so I'm learning from Dax Williams. Make sure you guys check him out. Okay, he's under Norman Swanico. He's a KI guy. He's phenomenal, like absolutely phenomenal. I teach him Balintawak. He's teaching me KI. I'm learning KI from him for long bladed work. And a lot more of that because I know how to swing a stick, right? But it was funny because we go out for lunch and we're talking about Tatang, right? And when he's telling the stories of Tatang's life, like I'm like smiling like a little kid. Like, this dude was crazy. He's a gangster. He's a mobster, right? Like he's killing people left, right, and center. He's being challenged all the time. He doesn't spar. He just, if you want to fight me, I'll fight you, but you're gonna die. Like that's like, it was really funny in that moment because like, cool, like, oh man, this shit works. Like it totally works. It works because, you know, he did it and he applied it, which is true. But the thing is it's him. It's not his system. Although his system is genius, especially the way that Dax and Norman teach it. Like I love it. I absolutely love it. There's a very cool mindset to it. And, you know, there is something to be said that it does work in combat. But the thing is any single person can learn that curriculum and they could die so quick.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or they could get caught, or they could be seriously maimed, whatever, right? So the thing is it's the warrior behind the belt. And that's one thing I teach my kids, and not so much my adults, which is funny. Right? Because I'm like, guys, your belt color doesn't matter. It's the person behind the belt that matters. So your belt color helps me with your curriculum and how to teach you and what progressive state you're at and short-term goals and blah, 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 all these good things, right? But if you get in a fight, like I've seen black belts get absolutely owned because they didn't have that warrior spirit. But now to the second point is, I feel like this warrior spirit is trying to be taken away from masculinity, right? And from mankind, like, or in Canada, humankind or people, right? And it's like, why are they doing that, right? Because they don't want warriors. They don't want people standing up for what's right. They don't want them standing up for their freedom. They don't want them standing up against this tyrannical bullshit, right? But in that process, like I had this guy call me the other day and he's like, listen, like I was a vegan for 20 years. He's like, he's like, I'm near 40 now. He's like in my late teenager years. He's like, I was getting fights. I felt very confident about myself. He's like, I'm eating meat again. I feel like I have more testosterone in my body. I want to know if I can still bang. I want to know if I can still do this stuff. And I'm like, cool, like that's great, but like what changed? You know, it wasn't
Right.
just the fact that you're eating meat. Did your social circle change? Did all these things change? And he was so scared, in my opinion, that he didn't know if he could protect himself or his family anymore.
That's a huge one. That's a huge one.
That's that warrior mindset of like, well, then go train, right? Like go every day and just find out. He's like, well, you know, I want to fight you. I'm like, bro, I have 7 black belts. I'm 6'4", 240, right? Like I already have a size advantage and I have skill advantage and I have combat advantage. Like I have all of these things. Like I can throw you up against one of my like couple stripe white belts and you might not be able to hold your own. Right. But you don't know that until you get in the dojo. You don't know that until you get on the mat floor. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for these days. I'm getting a lot more 35 to 45-year-old men coming into the dojo and being like, I want to see if I still got it. Right. Yeah. And then I put them through my system and they're like, whoa, I don't got it. Sign the paper, right?
Yeah, it's great marketing, and it's for one, it's giving power back to man, not just men in general, but to mankind, because to maintain our sovereignty and our individual liberty within a democracy, we have to have the capability to defend said things. As much as the verbalization of our sovereignty and the desire, it's defended at the behest of violence. Democracy.
That's a much more politically correct way of putting it. Thank you.
Yeah.
My PR person is going to be like, "Yo, call Kurt more often. Get some training there."
Well, and just in the same. So the untested, unblooded, unsatisfied man is also far more dangerous than the man who's put it in the time, because there's this beautiful poem that is, be wary of the gray beard upon the field littered by the bodies of young men.
Nice. Wow.
The other side of that is, be wary of the old man in the gym where young men quit often, because they've just put in the work. They continue, they have the purpose, they have the drive, they have the why. Where I'm at, as much as I joke about approaching 40, being broken, etc., the fact is I train more now, more attentively, more intensely, more purposefully, both more so in the mental game and in the physical game, because I have to, I must, because I want to maintain my individual liberty and sovereignty. But more importantly, I have to be capable to do these things for the protection of those whom I love. And I have that responsibility because of the experience, because of my education, that I have to do this for them, because there's a skill, time, and experience deficit for them. My children, they're children. My wife, she doesn't do this. So it's requisite of me to do that, because I must. If I want to protect those whom I love, I must prepare.
Yeah. Do you feel like you do that out of fear?
No, I do it out of purpose. I do it out of love. As a young man, I did it out of ego, out of identity.
Yeah.
At a point where I was at the weakest of my mentality, through depression, through PTS, through just all these things, that was based upon fear. Now it is because of beautiful purpose, because the life that I've been given after my suicide and death in 2019 is every day is a gift. So I must put forth the effort every day to be worthy of that gift. So it's by purpose. And it's, again, the why is based upon love, not just love in general, but love of what I do, love of whom I love.
Well, and the reason why I asked is, it's like, you know, we're talking about self-defense versus personal protection, right? And it's, both of our personal protection has not come up yet.
No.
Our willingness to sacrifice ourselves for our family isn't actually protecting ourselves at all. It's protecting them.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's the warrior, right? That's the martyr syndrome. That's the whatever you want to call it, right? But that's who we are. That's probably why both of us joined the military, to help those who couldn't help themselves.
That is correct.
Right? But there's a lot of people in this world who don't feel like they have the power to be able to do that. And I think that's where there's this I feel like the pendulum is shifting. I feel like as impending doom is coming down upon us, within the next 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
There's this point where it's like people are like, I got to do something, because this guarantee of safety isn't a guarantee anymore.
Yep.
Right? There are people entering our country that will kill me for my phone, because my phone will give them $500 on the street, and that $500 will feed their family.
Yep.
Right. And it's when you start thinking about it a little bit differently, or that fear is activated, that fear can be a motivator, that fear can be inspiring, that fear can be a lot of things. Yep. And like you said, you're doing it out of love for your family, love for protection, love for all these things. But I feel like society labels fear as a bad thing, just like they label suffering as a bad thing. Right? Where it's like suffering can be a good thing with the right mindset, right? Fear can be a good thing with the right mindset, but whatever it is that motivates you to get into the dojo or gets you somewhere, right? I think we have to go back to the gratitude, right? And you talk about the gratitude of your life every day, which is phenomenal, right? But I too have had severe depression and suicidal thoughts and all of these things, and it's only made me stronger, right? But when you go through those lows, now you know what it's like to be down there. Yeah. So when you're living here in this nice state of being, you're like, okay, life is good. But it's only once, and then there's other people who are like way up here, they're super happy all the time, but that's also an extreme. And that's kind of the naivety, or, the ostrich head in the sand of, I don't see what's actually happening down here. Yep. Right. And I think when we actually can find this balance of kind of both in the middle of like, listen, there is shit happening. Yep. Life is getting more scary. We do have to learn how to protect ourselves. We do have to walk around more confident. Right. We do have to be able to be a hard target for those criminals. Yep. Right. And it's, there's some really, I'm just going to say soft instructors that put out the message like, well, you're victim blaming and you're victim shaming and you're doing all these things. And I'm like, I can see where you're coming from that with that point of view, but I would rather be paranoid than dead. And I know that's an extreme, but it's also one that's true. Like when I'm walking around with my family, I'm always aware. I'm very aware of what's taking place and what's happening. And I'm okay with taking on that added stress in my life to make sure that my family is okay. Yep. In doing so, it's also woken up my family, I hope a little bit, right, to the idea of, hey guys, there could be danger here. So just be more aware. Yep. Right? I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm not asking you to be paranoid. Let me be paranoid. Right. And I'm not like, a super paranoid dad where it's like, you can't go out by yourself. You can't do this. You can't go that. Right. But there is definitely like a balance in there that you have to learn to find, because like my stepdaughter, she's turning 15 next weekend. She's 5'9". She looks like she's 18 years old. And I'm like, listen, like, you're about to be opened up to a whole new world that you never experienced before.
I have a 13-year-old daughter.
So bro, right?
I just had an incident here recently, and it's real in my little town of 5,000. It's real. Now, talk about paranoia, because words have meaning. Yeah. Would you say it's because paranoia denotes it from a point of fear? What about prepared? You were prepared.
100%. 100%. But that's that fine line, right? Everybody says, paranoia, because that's the trigger word, right? And that's why I use that word, so that people are like, well, you're super paranoid that something's going to happen. And I'm like, no, I'm aware that a possibility of this could happen. And depending on where I am and environment, the likelihood of it happening is here or there. When I walk into a restaurant, right, my girlfriend gives me my back to the wall so I can see the entrance. And so I can see everybody. At the start of the relationship, she was like, why do you always sit there? And now she knows that's where I sit, because she's like, I'm protected. So she feels safer because, it helps, right? But being prepared what is being prepared? How about we go down that path?
It's the hard road is what it is.
Yeah.
Being prepared is the hard road because you have to do more than the average person. You have to put more time and effort in the work, the education, the awareness, the present mindfulness of what you're doing in that moment, because you both have to live in two dynamics of enjoy the moment with the people that you're with and aware at the moment of anything external.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
and that's hard.
Yeah. Well, it is if you don't do the spiritual work.
Yep.
It is if you don't do the mental work, right? So it's like I look at it like a cup, right? So how full is my cup, and how much of my awareness is going to fill up my cup, and how much of that cup is going to fill up my enjoying of the moment, which you said, right? Mm-hmm. So I separate those into two cups, right? And I'm like, okay, today, there was just an incident last week within Calgary. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit more vigilant today. So I'm going to be 40% in the moment, but 60% a little bit more aware. And each day you have to think about that. But that requires you to be in the moment, which is actually the gift because you're trying to be in the moment, right? So is that a bad thing? No, not necessarily. But for example, we go to Mexico last summer, right? Mm-hmm. We're all on a big family trip. It's a massive resort. Okay. Before we go on a trip, I'm looking at the cartel lately. I'm seeing what's happening. Do I pay off the cartel? Do I pay off the police? Because they're basically the same. Right. What areas should we go to? What areas should we avoid? If there's like the whole resort was so big, it's like, if I was a criminal, I would probably sneak in here, and this is where I would park my car, and this is where I would abduct people. So I already had the map in my head and figured out. People would be like, yo, that's so paranoid. I'm like, no, but do you know what? My kids aren't going to be on the human trafficking network, and your kids may or may not, but I'm going to guarantee that they don't end up there.
It's funny because go ahead.
Because I've done that though, I was so much more present in the moment that I had my routes planned and that I had all of that I felt safer. And when I felt safer, I actually was able to relax more on the trip, and I wasn't worried. I wasn't stressful. I wasn't anything, right? But people should be doing that, in my opinion, when they go for a run, no matter where you live, right? Like we live in a very good part of Calgary, right? And there was an incident 3 weeks ago now, right? Where a girl's running on her own, right? And a guy runs and attacks her, and she's in a bathroom, right? She ran to the bathroom for safety. She closed the door, which is funny. I actually did a video on it, which was awesome. I mean, not her, right? But, right? And she closed the door and bang, 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 bang. She had her phone on her. She called. Well, what if she didn't have her phone on her?
Right.
Right. What if she didn't see that somebody was following her? Like she was still being attacked. And it's like, so she did those things right. Now, did she do that because she had training about it? Because she thought about it? Because she seen a video? Was there something that just triggered the mind a little bit? And that's why I put out as many videos as I do, because my whole goal is just to give you a thought and plant a seed.
Yeah.
How often you choose to water that seed is completely up to you. Right. But my plants are very big, right? I've been feeding them for a long time, but that's who I am. As a protector of my family and of other people, I would do it for other people as well. I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with living that life. If you're not okay with living them with that, fine. But understand you might be more at risk.
Well, the weight of knowledge and experience is part of it is sharing it and also carrying the weight of the knowledge and the experiences that you went through. So resiliency and confidence comes at the behest of facing adversity and going through all that suffering to determine what is the difference between pain, being uncomfortable, fear of, and actual damage and injury.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't make it through that whole process. And this is where, again, we have people who are physically broken and emotionally broken, because part of that is they don't have the safety net to carry them through that process of education and learning and facing resiliency or developing resiliency. But the people who do, they have this beautiful, like, not kaleidoscope, but this beautiful image, this beautiful tapestry of interesting experiences that they can draw from and that they can resource for. I've been there. Okay, this isn't that big of a deal. I know what this is like. I have the experiences and survive those things. And on the back end of that, having gone through those experiences, you have to go through the mental, emotional, the spiritual, and the psychological to be able to work your way through those experiences or things that trigger those experiences. So it's not a point of trauma, but post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And that is, again, the mental side of martial arts.
So do you find, like, do your coaches ever talk about that? Or have you had coaches that talk about that? Or is it more like you found that there was a hole in maybe their curriculum that you've just had to do that? Or do you feel that's just pure military training?
It's kind of a mix. So I've had to develop that on my own in a lot of ways, but I've had a few people in my life, because I've had a lot of mentors, as many people do, that have brought forth having suffered often and a lot, and most of the time at their own hand, that have a perspective in life that they can grow from that and help educate from those experiences, and not from a point of fear. And what I find are these people who come from a background of ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences. They were at risk youth. A lot of these people had dealt with violence, have dealt with homelessness, have dealt with addiction and recovery, and come out on the other end facing it and gone through that process of suffering, are damaged, but have moved beyond that damage and don't allow that trauma, that damage to determine their purpose and their identity. So
they face their shit, right?
Well,
it's interesting, right? Because it's so ever since I went viral, I actually started a self-defense class. And it's funny because my Gong Fu program is my mixed martial arts system, but built for the street. So that's what pays the bills. It's my kids program, which is very popular. It's my adult program, which is very popular. Then I have FMA, Wing Chun, and Jiu-Jitsu as well, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I was like, okay, well, obviously people are interested in this. I feel like I'm teaching my students self-defense and the self-defense mindset in the Gong Fu program. Then, we've only been running this self-defense class now for 8 months, right? And in running this class, it's funny because it's like they do the Gong Fu first, so they're super sweaty, they're super tired, they've done everything. Now they come into the self-defense class, and it's a perfect opportunity because I'm like, okay, this class is less physically intense. And we have a lot more conversations about the things that you and I are talking about right now. And I feel like the students that cross-train in the Gong Fu and in the self-defense class are going to be way more prepared than one of my highest belts who is only trained in Gong Fu. Right. And that's where I felt like I'm doing more of a service. The only thing is why is that self-defense class less popular?
Because on the back end of it, it's reactionary. Plus, the work isn't sexy because people want to be able to punch and kick. So, like in my own case, what I have, for one, I really hate the weekend empowerment seminars where it's like we're going to learn a basic amount of skills, put forth the effort, and say, "Hey, you're strong, you're capable, etc." But you don't carry the work thereafter. Those are more damaging to the community and does a disservice for people coming in to this lifestyle because it gives a false sense of security. Now, when they're utilized as a jump off point to start with the conversation, saying, "Hey, this lifestyle is hard. It's a lifestyle for one. Do the work in between." That part works. But what I found with personal security and self-defense classes, one, it is coming at the reaction after the fact. So you have to work through all that trauma of the incident. And that is the hardest part. But dealing with people on the preemptive side and the personal protection classes where it is preparedness, those people, that's a small group. Again, we call them preppers. But the fact is they are prepared ahead of time and who are proactive in their personal protection. That's a lot of P's, but the fact is, in my definition of self-defense versus personal protection is preventative and it is purpose driven as something that is prepared ahead of time. Versus self-defense, it's reactionary. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think that's why, you know, is there's this weird stigma that everybody thinks that if they train martial arts, they're good at self-defense. Right. And you're like, whoa, 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 wait a second. Like
yeah.
you might be.
Yep.
Maybe you're fortunate enough that you have conversations with your instructors after class. And those conversations talk about maybe you got in a fight on the weekend or defended yourself on the weekend, right? Maybe this happened. Because like I got some young guys in my program. Like, I heard you got in a fight. Tell me what's going on. Better not be a fucking fight, right? Because if you're fighting people, you're out. I'm not looking for that. But if you're defending yourself, if you're not instigating, if you're not ego, right? I understand you're 20, but you should also be smart, right? Because at any point you could die. At any point you could hit somebody and they could get knocked out, they could fall down and they could die. Now your whole life, your whole beautiful life that you have in front of you, you're 20 years old, right? You don't get to live anymore, right? Now you're Bubba's, you know, Tuesday night in jail. Like, no thanks.
And the effect thereafter within your social circle, because the fact is everybody is loved by somebody.
Yeah.
And that interruption is damaging across the board.
For sure. And it's damaging for your family. It's just damaging, right? So it's like, so there's this interesting part where I think where it's like, why is there this stigma that self-defense is just the way if you train martial arts? Right. And that's one thing that I'm really trying to do. And it's very interesting. So for example, this morning, we hit 300,000 followers on Instagram.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. It's pretty cool. Right. So I'm like, okay, things are going well. Yeah. If you scroll up right now, so martial arts, keep scrolling higher. Or sorry, the second one is a reaction video, which is basically martial arts. Right. What the main videos, right? Martial arts defense, beat them to the punch, martial arts, right? How much of that in there is actual self-defense?
Very little in the regard of like blatant self-defense.
Right. Well, and the thing is so I get the stats on my end, right? There was one video that we did with her name's Jazzy. She's an awesome Filipino martial artist out of Calgary under United Fist. She's in this video. She's small, petite, so we used her. I think she's 14 at the time. I'm like, can you dress up like even younger? Because she looks quite old, right? And she came in. We did like a kidnapping self-defense video.
Yeah,
that video went viral. Like on Instagram, it did 10 million, which is quite a bit, right? And my followers on every other platform are 95% male, right? Age 25 to 45 is my demographic. After that video on Instagram, the majority of my followers were female. So 55% female to 45% male. So we're like, okay, hold on a second. Like, why is there so many more followers now because of this one video? Yes, but why? It's because it was moms or whoever that basically said, hey, listen, this guy's putting out some good tips. Yes, he does martial arts, and these are some martial art things, and he talks about it, but I sprinkle little tiny self-defense, little base sprinkle, right?
Yeah.
Some self-defense concepts in there. So even if you read the subtitles or you just listen to it, 5 seconds of that video of all the martial arts techniques that you may learn, you may not ever need that, but the 5 things, right? So I'm like, if you had good situational awareness, you wouldn't get caught in this situation. Okay, let's talk about if you get caught in this situation, because that's, especially in North America, especially these women's self-defense weekend courses like you're talking about, right? That's what they want to know. That's where the fear is. They don't want to spend an hour like 50% of their weekend talking about preventing it. I know 2 instructors that do that right now, and they do okay, but they have phenomenal situational awareness information, phenomenal self-defense information, all of these amazing stats, skills, and things you should avoid. And they don't do well as a business because they don't know how to sell to people.
I ran into the same problem because I used to hold a 4-hour workshop every month as a personal protection preventative class. And the first hour and a half was we're going over doctrine. We're going over personal protection,
Yeah.
mindset training, going through slides and scenarios, and showing all the data ahead of time before we got into the physical skill sets.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. Now, I had some hardcore ladies that came in consistently because they had the onus of the reason why.
Yeah.
And they were super.
Or they'd already been in it.
Yep.
And now they're doing it because they have fear, because they don't want to go back to that again.
And on the other side of that, and this is the cost of from a personal protection instructor, self-defense instructor, especially as a man telling a woman how to defend themselves from a man is tricky. It just is, because it's a man telling a woman something. The other part about that is triggering a point of violence. I had this very unfortunate situation where I was doing a knife defense thing with a woman, and she was just shut down and triggered back into some childhood trauma because she witnessed this with her own mother from her stepdad. And like, she was just done for the day, and having to process through that trauma was such a powerful and difficult thing for me, let alone the class. That is something that personal protection self-defense instructors need to be mindful of. It. You need to have some sort of mental health support there in class to help with people through these triggering events, because they do happen. Yeah,
well, and so I ran one out of a request a couple months back, right? And it was successful for sure. So I did a morning session and an afternoon session. You could stay for both if you want, but typically it was one or the other, right? And I told myself, I'm like, they are here to learn the physical skills. I know the majority of them are, but they're going to know I'm different because I've asked all of them to text me first to set up payments, but also please check out my profile and watch some of my videos so you know what I'm about. You know what you're getting into. So the first half hour, I said, guys, this is the most important part of the class. If there's anything you remember, it's this, and this, right? So remember all this mental training. We're going to go into the physical stuff, and you might feel more important, or you might feel more confident now that you have these physical things. But you're not going to remember a sequential pattern. If somebody's choking you and trying to rape you, you're not going to remember how to armbar them. You're not going to remember how to escape. You're not going to remember any of those things. What you are going to remember is hopefully how to prevent this from happening to you. So yes, we are going to focus on the physical skills, but I want you to focus on this more. And I would just repeat. End of the 3-hour session happens. I said, okay, now you're going to your car. Show me you have situational awareness. I walk outside, for example, I've done in previous ones. I walk outside, and some of them walked out on their phone. Some of them walked out without their keys ready and the car ready to be unlocked. Some of them didn't look around their car before they got in the car. Some of them didn't even change anything. They walked out just talking the whole time, completely oblivious. And I stopped them and I was like, I could have got you there, could have got you there, could have got you there, could have got you there. What didn't you get from my conversation? And they're just like, oh, you mean like right now? Like I have to do it all the time? They're like, we live in a good area. I'm like, 3 days ago, 3 dudes just robbed the Shoppers Drug Mart with guns. And they're like, what? We're in Northwest Calgary. That should have happened, right? How did those criminals get the guns? It's illegal for them to have guns, you know.
Criminals, how dare they?
Right? Yeah, how dare they not follow the laws, right? So there's this, in that moment, I was like, wow, I don't like running this class, right? I don't mind it, but I really want to train people that want to learn. Because if people don't want to learn, they're not going to learn.
No.
Right. And I think that's where there's certain instructors in this world, I'm sure you know a lot of them, that are just doing it to make bank. Because you can pull in some serious cash a weekend. If you, women's self-defense seminar taught by the world's second most popular self-defense instructor, I can fill that class in a heartbeat. Right. And I can make a couple grand in a couple hours of work. Great. Take it home, go from there, wipe off. Oh, hopefully that worked. Maybe that didn't. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of techniques that could or could not work. Right. And it's like, my biggest pet peeve is it's like, well, you know, I could just, you know, kick him in the groin. I'm like, cool, kick me in the groin.
Or just shoot him.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. Well, let's stick with Canadian law. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, okay, ready? You are 100% allowed to knee me in the groin right now. I'm going to choke you, but I'm not going to be nice. I'm not going to stand there. like understand that this is what it's going to look like, right? And everybody's like kind of like and finally I get somebody who feels confident enough or strong enough or who feels like, yeah, okay, I can do it. I'm like, you have foot, and I'm not wearing cut protection, I'm not doing anything. And I grab them by the neck and I run forward. I pin them to the wall, right? And she's freaking out, right? And I'm like, knee me in the groin, come on. She knees me in the groin. She hits a good solid shot to the groin. Now she's on the floor.
Yep.
And I'm like, how did that work out for her? And everybody, like, you see everybody's eyes like, holy shit. Like, Kevin's a super nice guy. He's smiling, he's laughing, he's telling jokes. We're all having fun. It's cool. And he turned the switch on and he was crazy mofo, right? And he was like, people didn't see what violence have looked like. And that might be the very first time they see an incident and it's in a class. Yeah. That's the benefit of that, right? Yep. They're not going to remember what to do, but they're going to know, holy cow, that really nice guy turned crazy right away. Because criminals are great at that. Criminals are the best at that. They're better actors than politicians, right? They can just turn on right away. They can go from the most suave, just, oh man, like it's unreal what the stories I've heard, to a psycho in a second.
Yep.
And if people don't get to see that, so that shock value alone could be worth the $45 you paid for a 3-hour session.
Absolutely. And I talk about the criminal acting ability. I often talk about the criminal creativity mindset, because that's a difficult thing, especially people in law enforcement, because they have the filter of their badge and their moral high ground to look at. Yeah. And so from the mental game, to understand the mind of the enemy, you got to think like the enemy. So to understand the mind of the criminal, you have to think like a criminal does and actually put into practice intellectually what they're going to do. And that tapping into that resource is a dark place. And a lot of people are unwilling to go into that dark place.
For sure.
Now, for some people, it's easier because they've been there, done that, or they're a little on that side anyways. But just like war, if you touch war,
crazy. Martial artists are a little crazy.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, if you're gonna touch war is gonna touch you back. If you're gonna touch violence is gonna touch you back. Yeah. And this is why we react and act the way that we do, because we've been there and done that. And again, the scope of experience is limited to the reality of an individual based upon where they live, their economic status, all these things. So they have the privilege of not having to face this stuff all the time. Yeah. But they're also at the disadvantage having not faced this stuff. Because like having grown up as a hood rat, gangbanger, and all that other nonsense, I have some experiences. Now, as a result of it, I have some trauma that I work my way through. Yeah. And now, approaching 40, so disconnected from that, I have the opportunity to love and teach and nurture that inner child, to work your way through. Like, yeah, you survived this, but let's deal with this on the back end, and let's prepare for this so we can teach the next generation to do better. But coming from a stance of preparedness, not trauma.
Yeah. And I think that's super important, right? And that's why, I love that today you've been able to really say, like, listen, this isn't fear, this is love. Mm-hmm. Right? It's finding a source for that, right? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people don't want to believe that people can be that cruel.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, like, yeah, I live in Canada and we're super timid, and we got, bobsleds and moose and right. But the thing is that violence exists everywhere.
Yeah, it does.
Right? And if not for the stories of me training LEOs, I wouldn't train as hard as I do, because when you hear of a story of a dude who's on PCP and can take bullets and can take knife wounds and can take full baton strikes to knee joints and elbow joints, and they don't stop coming, you start seeing a whole new reality of what human beings are capable of.
Yeah.
Right. And it could be anybody. It could be the cracked out, chick on the side of the street, right, who gives you the fight of your life. Yeah. Right. And people say, yeah, for sure, size matters 100%. But at the same point, the mentality, and I think that's why people relate so much to, like, you don't know when I see red, bro. And it's like, Well, that's actually good.
Yeah.
Like if you can turn on that red, you're going to give somebody a fight who's never even seen pink. Right. And if you're like, we use the word privilege. I don't like the word privilege personally. Right.
Yeah.
But it's just because it's like some people just don't know. They just don't know what it's like. So, when you watch videos and you see those things, like I spent the better part of my 20s when I wasn't training 8 hours and teaching 8 hours, is I would come home and I'd watch Kung Fu movies. Well, eventually, after I watched all of the Kung Fu movies and all the FMA movies and all of the movies that I loved, I eventually, and it was YouTube. And I go onto YouTube and I'm just like, fight video compilation. You just say it and you're like, whoa, like, that doesn't work, or that didn't work in that scenario. Why didn't that work in that scenario? Okay, look, and you start seeing it. And to me, it's like I'm deprogrammed from violence. I mean, can be a good thing, bad thing. I don't want my son, who's 6 years old, I don't want him to be deprogrammed through violence, but I also want him to know that violence exists. Right. And that's why he's in martial arts. But it's also this idea of, if people have never seen it, right, they don't know that there's people out there that can do that, or that would do that, right? And I think that's where the information alone is self-defense. Right? It's just knowing, even if you listen to this whole thing, which would be great, right? And you've never done anything before, you've never done martial arts, you've never done anything, the information that Kurt and I have shared today is going to at least open up your mind a little to a possibility of something maybe changing, right, in your daily life. So if you're walking with your wife in the mall, right, or sorry, down the road, right, like be on the inside and be the center protector if somebody's coming this way. Right? Like little things like that. You start just doing it differently every single day. It will change, and it will give you more confidence, right? But it's like on our Netflix profiles, my profile is MDK, right? Murder, death, kill. This is where we go to watch all the things, right? The girlfriends is like girly shows, right? And it's like, but that's the difference, is she'll watch an MDK movie with me, and she's like, we have to watch like a chick flick now. Like I can't sleep. Right. And then I watched the chick flick. I'm like, I can't sleep. That bitch was cheating on that guy the whole time. Like, what the hell? Like, this is bullshit. She's like, I can't watch your shit. You watch like 75 people get stabbed. Like, we watched Raid together one day, and she's like,
great movie.
Love it. Like, phenomenal, right? And it's like, she's like, how can you watch that? I'm like, because it's fake. I know it's fake, right? And she's like, so, but that's the difference between men and women. That's the difference between what we're accustomed to, what we're not. Right. And I think that's where we need to be both. We can't be one or the other. Right. If we're black and we're white, we'll never find a balance within our life. And the more that we can find balance within our life, the better. That balance in my life was brought to me by martial arts.
Yes.
It wasn't brought to me through anything else. Right. But I mean, it's been the majority of my life. Like, it's 35 plus years now, and I'm 40 years old. Like, I took time off for sure. Like, I got into cars. I love cars and golf and all these other things, right? But there's this balance of what I'm really trying to strive for as an individual of I really see things black or white. It's very simple like that, because it's either this technique works under pressure or it doesn't. Plain and simple. But if it doesn't work under pressure, totally okay. Just don't say it does.
Yeah.
And that's where that self-defense thing is very interesting. Dean, Dean, you have PTSD, bro, from that one ride in the Corvette. We raced a Tesla in my Corvette C7, and like every podcast I'm on, he's like, he almost killed me. We didn't almost die. We won the race. It was great. Yes, we went fast, but everybody's alive, Dean. Just wait till next time, Dean. I'll show you.
It's an experience to grow from. Now, so on the back end of this, dealing with tapping into those resources of violence. So dealing with the conditioning side, so our sons don't have to deal with this, or be deconflict or just disconnected from the reality of violence, because it's just, as men, we have violence. It just is. This is the reason why we're built this way, is because we have to be violent. but it's the conditioning, because I have a son, and conditioning him, making sure I don't condition him the way that I was conditioned, because my adoptive family has a nearly unbroken lineage of warfare going back to the French and Indian Wars. I mean,
Wow.
just from World War I to current, unbroken.
Wow.
And here's the other part about that: the post-traumatic, the generational trauma attached to PTS throughout all of that, because the majority of my family and the adoptive family are reoccurring alcoholics.
Yeah.
They have so much trauma that has been carried down and programmed each generation incorrectly because they had no opportunity, no resources.
Yeah.
So watching the men of my family just be so self-destructive, being continuously subject to their trauma, I recognize this, and I don't want to perpetuate this, even though I've had my own experience of it. But the fact is, if you're conditioned in such a manner of, this is your purpose, this is your intent, you're going to be a warrior, this is what we do, but not having the mental, emotional, and spiritual side to back it up, you're just asking for broken boys in the bodies of men becoming monsters.
100%.
So, and this is where the balance of martial arts can be that. Because martial arts has a considerable amount of spirituality, especially Asiatic martial arts.
Yeah.
So again, the art is sustainable. Combat really isn't. And this is where you maintain the locus of control by having those intellectual conversations, preparing you for violence.
Yeah. And it's through me, it's just experience and wisdom. And it doesn't have to be your stories, right? But you know, it's the same idea. Like, my grandfather was in World War II, right? And you know, he was in a POW camp in Germany for 959 days. Like, that's a life, right? Like, it's crazy, right? And all of these people have gone through all of these things. And I love that you brought up generational programming, because it's, well, one, it's definitely not just men, right? I know some women who are serious warriors, right? But they're warriors because they had to be warriors. That's just 5 minutes, okay, bro? And in that process where they, whoever it is, whatever body, right? Because I don't see men or women, right? I do, right? But when it comes to, you walk in the dojo, I see a body type. Right? And I decide, how do I destroy that body type or not let that body type destroy me, right? So you got tits, I don't care, right? It's I'm gonna fuck you up. So it's true. Like, that's how I look at it, right? Like, I grew up, like, my sensei's daughter beat grown men at like 19 years old in Taekwondo competitions, like, beat them, right? And I was like, this is awesome. This is fantastic, right? But when we get back to the generational programming thing, it's like, what the difference for me is, it's giving them information, it's leading them on the path, but not forcing them on the path.
There you go.
Right? Because the second that what resists persists, you don't want your kid to go and do a whole bunch of drugs like you did growing up. Well, don't tell them to not go and do drugs and hold them tight and say, don't do what I did. It's learned from my experiences. It's being able to build emotional intelligence and communication, that you can have these deep conversations. And once they get to a certain age, be like, listen, like, this is what I went through. I'll tell you all the stories I went through, and you probably don't want to hear them, but I'm doing it because I want you to learn from my experiences. I was the exact product of that. My dad had a very interesting growing up, especially after my grandfather in World War II and being an alcoholic. Eventually he became an alcoholic. He had to quit because he had heart surgery and all these things, but he ran with a biker gang for years. He was the enforcer of the biker gang, right? So he's going through all this programming, and he's like, Kevin, I don't want you to go through all this. I'm like, don't tell me what to do. And I did the exact opposite, right? What resists persists, right? And it was like, okay, well, are there better ways that you can do that? And as a parent, it all comes down to communication skills. Be honest with your kid, trust your kid, they'll trust you. Show them what you want. Don't try and control them, because the second you control them, right, it's very similar to jealousy, right? If you hold on to somebody who's a wet bar of soap and you squeeze hard, that soap is going to pop out. But if you hold it enough to be there for them, to listen to them, to hold them close, to give them compassion, right, they won't slip out of your hands. But when you try to control someone, it's an abusive relationship, right? So you have to do that, but you also have to guide them in a certain way. And being a parent, I'm very new as a parent, right? I've only been a parent for 6.5 years now. And it's like, I've taught kids since I was 19. So I know what they're going through. I've talked to a lot of parents. I've talked to all these things, but the failing grace has always been the parent is trying to control the kid, right? And now you take that and you do that with your own students. You really learn to become the next level of how to become the best version that they're going to try to follow, right? And by you being open with everything, all the suffering you've been through, and being vulnerable and telling us and telling your family, that's what's going to change the next generations to come, because you're emotionally intelligent enough, because you've done the work inside, to be open and honest and brutally vulnerable with them, and be like, listen, like, this is what I went through. You can go through this too, but you probably don't want to. Yep. Right. And I think it's super cool, man. And that's what I love about our podcast is it's so much more about just, or our conversation, sorry. It's so much more than just physical.
Yep.
Right. And that mental side of things, that spiritual side of things is, it's awesome, man. It's awesome. And, you know, that's why we got to keep having conversations like these.
Word. Yeah. And this is the mantra that I have adopted on my new life, is that I am more than my trauma. I am more than my violence. Nice. I am more than just a professional punching bag.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a guiding light, because it's all based on love. I love where I'm at in my life. I love my family. I love my wife, whom I've been married to for nearly 20 years, wow, and our children. And I love the opportunity to share the experiences of what I have learned to help prevent, in a personal protection standpoint, the situations that occurred to me, as not to pass it on to my children. Nice. And I think in just all parenting, it is about mentorship, of teaching them the skills to make it to adulthood and protecting them along the way, but not forcing it upon them.
Yeah.
So
well, try and force it against a girl, right?
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, any teenager, right? It's not going to work out well for you.
No.
It won't. So,
well, brother, I appreciate you and your time. I know you're a busy man, and yeah, we're going to do this as often as we can. So
great, much appreciated. Love being on your podcast and help you grow and help me grow, and, you know, walk people a little bit more into the idea that I'm not just a 1 minute man.
Yeah. Well, awesome, brother. I appreciate you, and enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Take care.
Later, homie. All right. So, yeah, that was a great podcast. I always enjoy speaking with Kevin. He's a special individual in my life, as are the majority, actually all of the people that come in my life through this podcast. And I'm very grateful to call him my friend, and very grateful for what he does for this community. So definitely check him out. And yeah, again, the things that we do are based upon love. As silly and esoteric as it is, it's the truth. So get out there, find something that you're passionate about, love it, and keep moving forward, because if we don't move forward, we're stagnant, and stagnation leads to death and obscurity. So, yeah, no long outro. Just have an awesome day, and I'll talk to everybody soon. Later.